Hi Eli, how you doing? Good to be with everybody today.
Welcome to SalesHood Live.
Thank you.
Matt, Cameron, we go back a long time, my
Too
friend.
long. Mm-hmm.
When did we meet?
I want to say 2007. Does that sound about right?
Salesforce.
Salesforce. A little island called Australia. Some refer to it as the West Island of New Zealand. It's like New Zealand, just less pretty, and the people aren't as smart.
So your accent.
Yes.
Tell me about where you're from. So from the very beginning, where you're born. Let's kind of really explain to everyone the accent and the heritage and the history.
All right.
Because we all know how amazing you are. You're doing such amazing things in the industry. We love you for everything you do. But I think it's important for everyone to get to know you a little bit.
All right, sure. Well, to start with, I was born at a young age.
That's amazing.
I born in New Zealand and I moved around a lot when I was a kid, which probably set me up well for sales because I had to make new friends quickly. Lived in the States, Little Island, Malaysia, Australia, and back to New Zealand in my teens. So I moved around a bit.
That's amazing.
And professionally, I kicked off with working for Hewlett Packard. They took me out of university after my second year, did a year as a full-time paid intern. The idea being I would go back to university, but then someone offered me some money to go be a sales guy for them. And being a true sales guy, I thought that sounds like a good idea.
So HP, after university, how old are you about?
I went there when I was 21. So I was 21 and a half, I guess.
Yes. The half.
And then someone said, hey, you know what? We can triple your salary if you come work for us and don't go back to university. And I said, let's do that.
Let's do that.
So I'd never got my degree. So I should be a billionaire by now, apparently.
Right.
I'm a dropout, but I hadn't figured that bit out yet.
So before we jump forward
and
go from HP into all the other great places, what were some of your early childhood jobs that you had?
So, first job I do remember distinctly. I was 11 years old and I was working for the local chemist where I would wash the bottles for the pills for the elderly folks that needed to have refills. I would then cycle those refill bottles to their homes and deliver them.
That's amazing.
And this is where I had to use my early sales skills because I had to figure out how to extract myself from lonely old people that wanted to talk to me for 45 minutes, right? And move on. And then after that, my next, perhaps my most notable job was when I was 15. I did two interesting jobs. One, I was a window cleaner. This guy figured out that he's an elderly guy who had this sort of franchise that he didn't like getting out onto multi-story window ledges anymore. And so he could sort of drop me out there, skinny 15-year-old kid, and I would do it. So I did that. I remember him because he had a pet pigeon that would fly around his house. Which amazed and disgusted me at the same time. The other job I had was, and this was character building, was if you've ever seen a brick in a fancy wall where sort of the edges are knocked off, they call it rumbling, it comes down a big tube, it knocks the edges off, it lands on a conveyor belt, and then me at 15 would get them and stack them in groups of 4 for 8 hours. That was literally my job for 8 hours. So I did that for a summer. It was
wax on, wax off, my friend.
You got it. But anyway,
there's some good muscle memory there.
Yeah.
And so your first sales job was HP?
Was HP. That was the first real sales job. Yeah, and it wasn't direct sales. I was looking after a reseller channel.
Right.
And as a junior account manager, had someone telling me what to do.
Got it.
Yeah.
And what was your sales process like back then?
It was interesting because back then they used a planning methodology called Hoshin, Japanese quality assurance oriented methodology, which is like a strategic planning framework, which many years later, I figured out was quite similar to the V2MON process that we learned at Salesforce. And we structured our accounts using the Hoshin planning methodology, which was about quality improvement and so QBRs, all that sort of carry on. But in terms of sales process, what I learned there was really relationship development. Because when you're doing wholesale, it's really about availability, specification, and price. And pretty much everyone's kit was the same. Same hard drive, same PC. It was like, do you have it now, and what price can I get it at? So then it just came down to how well people liked you.
There you go.
Yeah. So,
and then from there, tell us, where'd you go next?
I went to a company called Digital Equipment Corporation, DEC, back in the day, and got bought by Compaq, which then got bought by HP.
Yes,
my
God.
I know, right? This is a long time, right? Digging back into the archives. And again, it was reseller relationships with some end direct sales, subsequent to which I went to Wang, which became a systems integration business.
Yeah.
So then I got tucked under the wing of a senior account director who ran very, very large accounts doing break fix, maintenance, service and support, systems integration. And that was a really good learning curve for me. And that's when I did my first formal sales methodology of any note. And that was TAS back in the day. And I think I've been trained in target account selling 3 times, which is now, of course, is Altify.
Right.
No TAS.
No, you've been a big fan of the TAS, the target account selling methodology, throughout your career.
Absolutely, yeah. I feel like most sales methodologies are derivative, and I feel like TAS was kind of the first one that I saw that was sort of a comprehensive view of the methodology.
Yeah, I think my experience with TAS, it's a great methodology, it's a great framework. Some of the highlights, compelling events.
Yep.
Decision-making process. What are some of the other? There's a TAS through 20 questions.
The 1 through 20 for me is the big thing, and the relationship mapping. I still don't see people doing relationship mapping. Like, what are the buying roles, the influence maps? Who matters, who's who in the zoo, the power bases, and that actually was tied to an old methodology. You may remember the Holden methodology, right? And you do the idea of fox hunting. So who's the fox in the account that you have to know? And I remember doing that and learning that at Electronic Data Systems, EDS, which was my next role. So no, I'm a big fan of that.
How much, let's kind of just jump forward for a second, how much methodology training do you think is happening these days in the industry?
I think it's really ad hoc. And I think the challenge is people don't bring new folks through a set of first principles. Like, it doesn't matter what type of deal you're going after.
Yeah.
There's certainly the basic relationship stuff you have to figure out, and the methodology around building rapport and sort of carry on. But when you get to complex sales, there are so many folks in there sort of just winging it, right? And I think where I was fortunate, I was brought up in an era where people had a lot of money to invest in training and development. And so, anyone our age would go through it, whether they were at IBM or an SAP or an early days Oracle, you got that training. And I've been through 5 formal methodologies, a couple of them multiple times.
Yeah.
And it's great because you just see the pattern and you're, okay, I get it. So, and I think people need that foundation.
Yeah, no, I agree. There are a lot of very successful leaders out there that are very successful because they have deep domain experience in what they do. I've known you for a long time. You've really carried sales excellence with you, and I applaud you for that.
Thanks.
That's pretty good. And so let's bounce forward.
Yep.
So when did you get to Salesforce? 2007, you said?
No, I got there 2005.
2005.
Because you got there 2000.
I got there 2005 as well.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah. I think I met you a couple of years after that. But I was there 2005, and so there's a fun story for that, how that happened. I was consulting at the time. I did 4 years of sales process consulting, and I had a client, a telco.
Sales process consulting. Look at that theme that keeps popping up.
I just fell in love with it. I realized I love this thing. And so I was with a telco called Hutchison 3G, and Salesforce had been sold to them back in the day when there were 2 people in all of Asia Pacific, 2 people you know well. And it didn't go very well because there was no professional services to make it successful. So I rang these people up. I said, get in here. I want to talk to you about this terrible CRM we have. And sure enough, 3 months later, I'm working for Salesforce.com.
There you go.
Because I realized the technology was there. It was such an exciting concept. But we met because I was grumpy with them about how badly the implementation had gone.
And what were some of the fundamental principles of sales excellence that you brought to Salesforce that helped you be successful there?
I think it was the idea of, early Salesforce was aligned to me philosophically because people were process driven, right? And the thing that I think they got excited about me was I said, look, this is just technology. You need to have a process to map it to make people successful. People didn't understand that back then. They thought, you put the CRM in and somehow magically it all just happens. And I think what I brought to the table, which I implemented internally as well, was the idea that we have to be able to measure our process. So see where it's working, where it's not. And then in the enterprise sales, the real key success for me really is that relationship mapping across a large account. It's where I see these deals going south. They're too narrow, they're talking to the wrong people. I know you've talked about the idea of happy years before, the people take you to call. And in that region at the time, we didn't have anyone who was doing enterprise sales. So I brought that with me. And you can move the needle. I think the first deal I did, I remember the largest deal I'd done at the time was 20 seats, and I did a deal for 80 seats, which still was tiny, but at the time it seemed a big deal. But I didn't know any better, so I asked them for 2 years cash up front and a 3-year contract, and they just signed it, and everyone lost their mind. And I was like, wow.
How'd you do that?
But because I asked, and it's a bit like, and for the folks out there running SaaS businesses, if you've grown up with the company, most reps are very embarrassed to ask for things like, we need service and support contract. An extra 20%. Most reps are like, we can't do that. We only, we had to discount to get the deal in the first place. The minute you bring someone in from an Oracle or an SAP or somewhere that just does it as a matter of course, it's like I just asked for it. Of course, they expected to pay for it.
They expect it.
Yeah, and that's what happened to us at Salesforce. All the new reps who came in were selling all the service support, premium support contracts, which made all the difference.
No, that's great. So great career at Salesforce and your roles. And I'm setting us up for what you're doing now because it's really been incredible to watch the career and then see you kind of emerge with this new venture, which we'll talk about in a second, so stay tuned.
Yeah.
So tell me, so at Salesforce, you're individual contributor.
Yep.
Quota carrying.
Correct.
Did that for a while, and then RVP, regional vice president.
Yep. So I was initially, it was a really exciting role actually, because when I was an AE, the two heads at the time moved offshore back to the US, and so I was left carrying the can. So there was no sort of regional leader. So I had customer success, SDRs, AEs, all reporting to me for at least a year. And then of course we had people who really knew what they're doing taking over those functions, and I was left purely with enterprise. So it was great because I learned how the business worked. I was involved in those things. So that was great. And I stayed there 5 years.
It's amazing.
It was fantastic. And the right time for me to leave was when we had, I think, 100 people in the group there in Australia. And I had that itch to go out and do something again, but still related to sales process, where I can move the needle.
So you've had a few VP sales jobs since, which is incredible. You've had some amazing SaaS experience. And so tell us about the inspiration around your current venture.
Yeah, so I've spent time since then working with companies that are private. So they're all Series A, B, or C companies. The name that a lot of people will know is Yammer, that got acquired by Microsoft.
Yep.
And what I
That was a great run.
That was fun. And what I consistently see was this lack of training for the management layer. Right, we're investing thousands of dollars in our reps, and we have sort of known quantities, the folks, the people, the notable people in the industry who can do that, the Barry Ryans of this world that people bring in. But management development was really lacking, and that's where you can really, it's where the leverage is, right?
Yeah.
And so,
but the managers, they just know how to manage, right?
Right, exactly. You just figure it
They're
out.
just great they're born being great managers.
Exactly. Everyone knows too. You just promote your best rep into management, and it's all going to work out.
And it's going to work out beautifully.
Yeah.
Hope.
So anyway, looking at these companies, as particular A's and B's, right? Series A, Series B's, they just don't have enablement, training, and development resources. And there was these folks wandering around looking for help. And so I thought, well, there's a problem I can fix. My mission is to create a community of managers that all have that set of first principles they need to be successful.
Yeah.
But then what I found at Salesforce, and so the reason we're still talking probably, is because we built this amazing network, right? We leaned on each other, and we had instant access to a global community of people who knew what they were doing. Now, if you're sitting in the back of Menlo Park, or you're in San Diego, or somewhere in your Series B company with 60 people in it, you don't have that network. And I thought, well, how do I give people the experience we have?
Yeah.
Right? And people
sharing of ideas.
Exactly.
What's working, what's not working, the templates.
Access to people.
Access to people.
I mean, it's the biggest thing, right? The number one thing I think for managers that'll cause them to fail is hiring. Can I hire quickly enough to support my quota growth? And can I hire well? And the best hires we ever make are our referrals through our network. Yeah.
And so your inspiration. So you started Frontline. Yeah. Which is such a great enterprise. How would you describe it?
Frontline is we have 3 values, and I think that describes it pretty well.
I love it.
We're a collegiate community of people that is trying to be world-class, right? And we're global. And how do we do that? We have a 2-day boot camp for sales managers, frontline sales managers. It's really intense. It's a fire hose. It's too much to absorb in 2 days. So then what do? We pour them out of the back of that into SalesHood, where they get to reinforce their learning and get certified as frontline managers. And then they join a private social network. This is where the collegiate thing comes in, right?
It's amazing.
A private social network where all the cohorts that have been through can support each other. So I'm wanting to plant these pods all around the world, and today we have them in Auckland, in New Zealand, randomly, San Francisco and New York, and next year we're taking it to Europe and elsewhere, in Asia in fact. So that's what Frontline's about. And then
frontline managers.
Frontline managers,
so you're
AEs.
Creating an army.
Yes.
You're creating a community of amazing, competent, confident, successful frontline managers, frontline sales managers.
Yeah, who I hope will grow up together, right? Because in 3 or 4 years' time, these people are going to be the sales directors, the VPs,
absolutely,
whatever else.
Cohort,
right?
Yeah.
And next year, to that point, we're releasing Playmaker, which is the next evolution of this. And this is for the VP of sales, targeted at the sub $50 million company, because most of us coming through the sales ranks have never run sales engineering, sales operations, sales enablement.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're expected to understand it. How do I build a sales organization? So we're going to use a very similar format for that.
So, you've done this now for, it's almost a year. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So why, I kind of joked a little bit about salespeople and they become managers, and managers should know. But what happens? How do you know a manager needs this kind of support? Like, what do you see? What are some of the signs you see in their company or their team that tells you, they need this coaching, they need this community?
Well, I'll say this, and trying to separate myself from the fact that I run the business.
Yeah.
Every manager needs management training, if nothing else, around coaching, how to coach and development. I don't think there needs to be any signs around it. If they've not been given a formal discipline around how to coach someone and develop them, they need it, whether it be this training or something else. But the signs that we'll see, and even and certainly at a VP level as well, is there's no predictability in their results. If I sit down with a manager and I don't know from one quarter to the next whether Johnny's team's going to make it and he can't defend his forecast, that's a clear sign that there's a problem. If Johnny's not being able to keep up with the hiring plan, if there's team attrition, if there's variability in attainment within the team, and you can't put a finger on why, it's all because he hasn't built, or she hasn't built a machine or an engine that's predictable. So
I believe in coaching. So tell us, what does bad coaching feel like? What does it look like or feel like?
So bad coaching feels like a scary interaction where my unpredictable boss is going to have an interaction with me and I don't know what the outcome's going to be. So I walk into every meeting with my boss ready to defend, to duck and dive, and I'm going to close up and not share and be vulnerable, which means you can't coach me properly because you don't know what's going on, because I'm not going to tell you.
I'm not curious.
I'm worried about what you're going to say. So
that's a bad manager.
That's a bad manager.
That's
it's
a bad
lose-lose environment, right?
Yeah.
And look, and you and I have both seen this, right? You've got these people that are renowned for being a tyrant. I'm certainly not going to go to that person.
I'm not going to mention any names.
No, I'm not going to walk into the room looking for support from that person. I don't, proactively, right? So what does good coaching look like?
What does good coaching look like?
Yeah, good coaching looks like the experience or the feeling that I have as I walk out of or going into this is this is going to be a growth opportunity for me. I'm excited to sit with Elay because I know that every time I do, he teaches me something, he makes me feel better, I develop, and I know at the end of it, we're going to walk away feeling that our relationship has strengthened. It's probably the key thing, right? Bad ones, it weakens our relationship. The good ones, it strengthens it. So I become more and more loyal to you because here's the thing for managers, right? If I believe that you care enough about me to invest in me and make me better, then it just dramatically increases my loyalty, and I'll follow you anyway. Right? And I'm much more likely to take your advice and be open to it if I think you've got my best interest at heart.
And so how do you help managers be better coaches through the Frontline program?
We do two things. We give them a framework for these discussions.
Got it.
And there are really three things. Number one is the long-term development, career development discussions. And most people don't know how to frame that up, right? Like specifically, what should you talk about to someone as they're thinking about 1 year, 2 year, 3 years down the track? And how do you coach and guide them through that? So there's that discussion. The second one is the review and performance discussion. So we've been in a sales call and you want to come back and provide me with feedback and help me grow and get better in a way that I'm not going to get defensive. So again, we give them a very prescriptive framework. Like this is the order in which you have the conversation and how you provide the feedback in a way that feels good. And the last one, which people often forget about, we actually give them a framework, it's a very simple one, for how you give positive feedback. So if you did really well, most people aren't good at giving praise.
Right.
So we give them a way to provide that feedback where it sticks.
Yeah, you are doing amazing work in the industry. It's truly incredible, and I know that everyone that's gone through your program and that sits through your weeks of sessions and really gets to experience kind of Frontline is really realizing a lot of great successes. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I think you mentioned that there's the next level up, which is the VP sales.
Yeah.
So what is let's do the same thing.
Yeah.
What does a bad VP sales look like versus a good VP sales?
So I have a consulting business outside of our education business, and I'm exposed to this a lot. I'm often brought in when things aren't going right, and I see a common thread. It's the experience of the executives, the investors is something's going wrong, we're missing our number, and we don't know why.
Got it.
We don't know, and so we need someone to get in there in the weeds to look at it. And what I find is you'll have a VP who just doesn't have the ability to create a playbook for their business and to build the systems behind it. So, they'll be handed a number, say, I want you to get from 5 to 15 million this year, Eli.
Yeah.
Go figure it out. And then they walk into a room and pretend not to be terrified about it, right? Because there's so much complexity that sits behind that. And as an AE, I've never had to do that, right? I've just got a territory to go after and a sales process, a methodology, some resources, I go after it.
Yeah.
Now, if you then get promoted to a VP and you've got to think about how to design those territories and how to enable my new reps and onboard and hire correctly and so forth and so on, it gets loosey-goosey. The stuff I said before, the early signs, pretty much the same for VP of sales. The main thing is they are unconsciously competent or incompetent. Sometimes they can be doing fine despite themselves because the product market fit is so good, and I can think of a few, where everything looks great until it doesn't.
Yeah.
Right, when things start to tighten, the TAM gets tighter or the ICP shifts, they don't notice because they actually aren't consciously competent. They don't know why they're doing well, and it falls apart. So what I've done is I've gone out to experts like yourself, for example, in sales enablement and sales effectiveness to contribute to a curriculum where each of the subject matter experts coach or train the VPs on, here's how you hire for this role, starting with this is what the role should look like. Here's the profile you need to support it. Here's how you manage and inspect against it. All the stuff you never find out as an AE.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's amazing. We're gonna wind this down.
Yep.
I think it's been great to have you here, and I want you to leave us with the last set of parting advice. And let's pick someone. Let's pick an account executive. Mm-hmm. And if I'm an account executive and I'm crushing my number, how do I know that I should start thinking about sales management as the next step of my career? What advice would you give me?
Okay, I would say to you, look at your intrinsic drivers. And one of the ways you can determine that is by thinking about how you exhibit that externally. If you've noticed in reviewing your behavior that you're the sort of person, as soon as they do a really great PowerPoint deck, sales deck that works really well, you immediately share it to everybody else. If you're the person that people come to all the time and say, Eli, I've got this problem, they're trying to negotiate to me on this point here, what would you do? And you're that go-to person, then you're floating to the top. You're more than likely the profile of person that should be doing that. If, however, you're the sort of person who just crushes it, works the long hours, is a bit of a lone wolf and whatever else, it's probably not you. If you get more joy from winning deals than you do with sharing and helping others be successful, more than likely you're not going to be a fantastic pick for a sales manager. You just don't take the pay cut and be a sales manager. That's something people forget about. It's a pay cut. It
is a pay cut. People don't realize that. So Matt, someone wants to reach you. How do they get you right now?
They can find me at two places. One, sassysalesmanagement.com. So
Sassy. Tell us about that.
All right. So Sassy Sales Management, spelled like SaaS, the software stuff. Sassy Sales Management is the name of the new book we're releasing next year, which is going to be the textbook for our VP of Sales program. Awesome. It's also the place we keep the registration for our Frontline programs.
Got it. Sassy. So they go to Sassy Sales Management. They find you. Email. How do they email you?
Just give me a Matt at, this one's tricky. Matt at
LinkedIn.
Yeah, let's do that.
LinkedIn's
easy.
Great.
Matt Cameron, you can find me.
Matt Cameron, my dear friend, thanks for being here.
Great to be here. Thanks, mate.
Thanks, mate.